Israel should make the Gaza Strip a parking lot by this time next week. Destroy the whole thing. And anybody that's going to support this Hamas nonsense. Listen, Joe Biden ought to be tried for treason. You understand that? Now, I get it. Obama's the real president behind him anyhow, and so he's...
This is the part of, like, what I just call, like, the biggest lie is, as Catholics, we believe, okay, Jesus said, he basically anointed Peter and the apostles to be the church, and that God's chosen people status follows along that line to the apostles, and those that follow the apostles and those that follow Christ. God's chosen people, the whole lineage of the Old Testament. And that those that follow the old ways, Jesus said, and I quote from Revelations 3:6, he calls them the synagogue of Satan. Okay, this is where the big divide is. So as Catholics, we view anyone that calls themselves followers of Judaism today as Pharisees. Well, they're the ones that crucified Christ, first off. And then they created their own Talmud 600 years later. In the 600s, 700s, their own Talmud under their own authority. They created their own book. So they crucified Christ. They created their own book under their own authority. And that is modern day Judaism, is the followers of the Pharisees that crucified Christ and created their own Bible, their own Talmud, sorry. That is modern day Judaism. That's the synagogue of Satan that Christ said in Revelations 3:6. Whereas the Catholics are God's chosen people. The Protestants literally flip the entire thing around. They end up saying that Catholics are going to hell, that we are satanic, and that the followers that crucified Christ are God's chosen people. That the people in Israel that we need to go over there and die for are God's chosen people. So it's literally a complete flip, a huge lie. And honestly, I don't even know enough about the whole history, because Luther was pretty anti-Semitic, like the first Protestant. So somehow it went from him to somewhere in the 1900s where all of a sudden Protestantism became so heavy on loving Judaism, basically more than the successors of Peter and the apostles. To me, that is like the biggest problem. And look, I was actually, whenever I was like in my early 20s, I was basically a Zionist. I was in the military.
I mean, most people were.
Yeah, because that's all like Fox News, and I know Daily Wire. I don't know when Daily Wire started.
Yeah, they returned the Jews to the Promised Land.
Yeah, it was that whole, there's like a mythology about it. Like, we got to defend God's chosen people. We got to go over there and we're just going to do whatever it takes. Just die for them. But that's the amount of propaganda that I saw on television. I remember during that time. And it didn't help that the whole Iraq war and everything.
But meanwhile, they were the ones that killed Jesus.
The ones that killed Jesus and a lot of other crap. And like a lot of the Protestants are like perfectly fine to like donate all of this money. And all the commercials on like Fox News is like, give money to these people. And it's all this like, you know, these pedophiles in the Catholic Church. Like, screw them. Give it all to these Pharisees in the Middle East.
But didn't Luther, didn't he say he didn't mean for this to go the way it went?
Yeah,
wasn't it him?
Pretty much anyone that starts any movement ends up saying something very similar.
I mean, even you can go back to the whole, even Peter and Paul had an argument about following Judaish role, like things that the Jews did, and then that's when Jesus stepped in was like...
Well, that's the point of the church. No, Jesus was gone at that point.
Well, they were still talking to him.
Yeah, but there was like the appeal up to the authority. That's the point of the Catholic Church. If you would have had it the Protestants' way, if there was just any argument, it would have been, well, now you have the Church of St. John, or Church of John, Church of Matthew, the Church of Peter. Instead, there's one church that's constantly united, and then you appeal up. So yeah, Peter and Paul had a disagreement, and eventually Peter actually sided with Paul. He realized that he was in the wrong, even though he was like the main authority.
Yeah.
It was the whole thing of circumcision and following the Jewish law. Because Peter thought that all Jews, anyone that was still going to be a Christian, needed to be circumcised.
Paul went out there and converted all these older people, bunch of...
He went to Greece. St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, that's like a Greek.
And he said they converted all these people to be Catholics, and then Peter was like, okay, you need to get them all circumcised.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, hold up. These guys are grown adults.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to be doing this right now.
Yeah, and first off, that was a Jewish tradition.
Yeah, from the Old Testament. Yeah, so I think that's like one of the biggest lies that people fall into, but...